It was supposed to be a simple afternoon, just a boy walking into a car dealership, dreaming big, looking at the cars he hoped to own one day. But instead of being welcomed, he was met with cold stares and harsh words. The salespeople didn't see a potential customer. They saw someone who didn't belong. Without even asking what he wanted, they told him to leave, shooing him away like he was wasting their time. Humiliated, he walked out, his heart pounding with frustration. He had done nothing wrong. He wasn't causing trouble. He was just a kid who loved cars. But to them, that didn't matter. They judged him by his appearance, not his potential. He went home that night, the weight of their words heavy on his mind. But what they didn't know was who he really was, or rather, who his mother was. The next day, the dealership was in for a shock. As the morning sun hit their glass windows, a sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up, its presence commanding instant attention. Doors swung open, and out stepped a woman whose name carried weight far beyond the showroom floor. The same boy they had dismissed was back, but this time he wasn't alone. And what happened next? Let's just say they would never forget it. The dealership fell silent as the Rolls-Royce came to a smooth stop. The employees, who had been chatting just moments ago, suddenly straightened up, eyes locked on the luxury car. They had seen wealthy customers before, but something about this felt different, almost like a storm was about to roll in. The driver stepped out first, dressed sharply, his movements precise and professional. Then the back door opened and she emerged, graceful, poised, and undeniably powerful. She wasn't just any woman. She was someone who commanded respect without saying a word. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she walked toward the glass doors, the boy following closely behind. He wasn't the same kid who had been dismissed the day before. Today, he stood tall, his expression unreadable. Inside, the salespeople exchanged nervous glances. Some recognized her immediately. Others whispered, trying to figure out who she was. The manager, who had ignored the boy the day before, suddenly appeared, adjusting his tie, putting on a practiced smile. "Welcome. How can we assist you today?" he said, his voice overly polite. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked around the showroom, her eyes scanning the cars, the employees, the entire space. Then, with a calm but firm voice, she finally spoke. And what she said next would leave everyone stunned. The woman's eyes locked onto the manager, and for a moment there was only silence, the kind that made people uneasy. She glanced at her son, then back at the man in front of her. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut through the tension. "Yesterday, my son walked into this dealership, and instead of being treated with respect, he was judged and thrown out." The manager's smile twitched, his hands clasping together nervously. I'm sorry if there was a misunderstanding," he said quickly. "We have a strict policy." She raised a hand, cutting him off. "A policy that decides who is worth your time just by looking at them." Her tone wasn't angry, but it carried weight, making every person in the room shift uncomfortably. The salespeople who had laughed at the boy yesterday now stood frozen, their expressions unreadable. Some of them avoided eye contact, while others nervously adjusted their ties, as if they could undo what had already been done. The boy watched quietly, his heart racing. He had never seen his mother like this before, not just as his mom, but as the powerful woman the world knew her to be. And for the first time, the people in that room were starting to realize it too. The air grew heavy with anticipation. Then she took a slow step forward, her gaze sweeping across the showroom. "Tell me," she continued, her voice as steady as ever. "Would you have treated him differently if you knew who he was?" No one dared to answer, but the truth was written all over their faces, and what happened next would make sure they never made that mistake again. The silence in the dealership stretched, thick with unspoken words. The woman's question lingered in the air, daring anyone to answer. The manager cleared his throat, glancing at his employees as if searching for support, but no one stepped in. His confidence from before had crumbled, replaced by the weight of realization. The boy stood beside his mother, watching it all unfold. Yesterday, he had felt small in this very room, unseen, unwanted. Today, the entire dealership was hanging on his mother's every word. But he wasn't just here to watch. This moment meant something. She turned to him and spoke softly. "Do you like anything here?" Her voice was different now, not questioning but knowing. The boy looked around, his eyes scanning the showroom floor. He had loved cars for as long as he could remember, but now the excitement was gone. The place that once felt like a dream now felt tainted. The employees watched nervously, unsure of what was coming next. One of the salesmen, the same one who had dismissed the boy the day before, stepped forward hesitantly. "Ma'am, perhaps we can make this right," he said, forcing a smile. "Maybe offer you a special deal." She let out a soft chuckle, but there was no humor in it. "A deal," she repeated. She stepped forward, the confidence in her stride making the manager swallow hard. "You think this is about money?" The tension in the room grew unbearable. The employees who had once ignored the boy now looked at him with something else, regret, maybe even fear. The boy inhaled deeply, then finally spoke. "I don't want a car from here," he said simply, his voice steady. His mother nodded, as if she expected that answer. "Good," she said, "but I didn't come here to buy." She glanced at the manager one last time, her expression unreadable. Then, with a quiet but powerful final statement, she turned toward the door. And in that moment, just before she walked out, something happened that no one in that room would ever forget. Just as the woman and her son turned to leave, the sound of hurried footsteps broke the silence. A man in an expensive suit rushed out from a glass office in the back of the dealership. His presence immediately shifted the energy in the room. The employees straightened, their expressions stiff with unease. The dealership owner had just arrived. "Wait," he called out, his voice smooth but urgent. His sharp eyes flickered between the boy and his mother, instantly recognizing who she was. Unlike his employees, he wasn't confused, he was panicked. The woman paused, turning slightly, but her expression remained unreadable. The boy, however, could feel the shift. This wasn't just about a simple mistake anymore. The owner forced a polite smile and extended his hand. "Miss Sinclair," he said, his tone measured. "Had I known you were visiting, I would have personally welcomed you. I sincerely apologize for any misunderstanding. Please, let's talk." The employees held their breath. Now they knew, this wasn't just any woman. This was Cassandra Sinclair, a billionaire entrepreneur whose name alone carried power. She didn't take his hand. Instead, she studied him, as if deciding whether his words were genuine. "Talk," she repeated, her voice calm but firm. "Were you planning to talk yesterday when your staff humiliated my son?" The owner's confidence wavered, but he recovered quickly. "I assure you, that behavior does not reflect our values. If there's anything I can do." She cut him off with a quiet laugh, but there was no warmth in it. "Anything," she echoed, tilting her head slightly. The boy watched, feeling something stir inside him. Something stronger than frustration, stronger than hurt. The owner nodded quickly. "Of course, anything to make this right." She held his gaze for a long moment, then finally spoke. "Good," she said, "but I don't want an apology. I want change." The weight of her words sank into the room. The employees shifted uncomfortably, and the owner's polite smile faltered. Then, before he could respond, she pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and lifted it to her ear. The next words out of her mouth sent a ripple of shock through the dealership. "Go ahead with the offer," she said smoothly. "I'll take the whole place." The room fell into stunned silence. The dealership owner blinked, as if he hadn't heard her correctly. "Excuse me," he asked, his voice suddenly uncertain. Cassandra Sinclair turned to him with the same poised expression. "You said anything, didn't you?" she said smoothly. "I've been looking to expand my portfolio, and this dealership is now mine." The employees exchanged panicked glances. The manager's face went pale, and the salesman who had thrown out the boy swallowed hard. This wasn't just an apology. This was a complete shift in power. The owner let out a nervous chuckle. "Miss Sinclair, let's be reasonable. This dealership isn't for sale." She raised an eyebrow, then turned back to her phone. "Double the offer," she said simply. The owner's breath caught. He knew what that meant. If Cassandra Sinclair wanted something, she got it. And if she was willing to pay double, there was no stopping her. The weight of the moment settled over the showroom like a heavy storm cloud. The employees, once confident and dismissive, now stood frozen, their futures uncertain. Then, the boy stepped forward for the first time. He looked at the manager, then at the salesman, the ones who had humiliated him the day before. "Yesterday, you told me I didn't belong here," he said, his voice steady. "Looks like you were wrong." A thick silence followed. No one dared to speak. And then Cassandra turned to her son with a small smile. "How about now?" she asked. "Do you want to pick a car?" The boy looked around at the gleaming luxury vehicles, the very same ones he had once admired from a distance. He took a deep breath, then shook his head. "No," he said with a quiet confidence. "I want to run the place." The dealership was his now, and every person in that room knew it. The owner's face was unreadable, but he knew he had no choice. The deal was done. Cassandra Sinclair had just bought the dealership, and with it, everything had changed. The employees who had once dismissed the boy now looked at him with a mix of regret and nervous anticipation. They knew their new boss wasn't just another rich kid, he was someone with a reason to be here. Cassandra placed a hand on her son's shoulder, pride shining in her eyes. "Then let's get to work," she said. It wasn't about revenge. It was about proving a point, that no one should be judged by their appearance, and that respect should be given to all, not just those who seem important. As they walked out, the same glass doors that once shut the boy out now opened wide for him. The same dealership that had turned him away now belonged to him. And the people inside, they would never forget the lesson they had learned. Outside, the sun gleamed off the black Rolls-Royce, but this time, it wasn't the car that turned heads. It was the young boy who had walked in as a nobody and left as something far greater, someone who belonged.